What's up, y'all? Got a family to feed, so let's get into this tea. We about to get into I'm not a lawyer, but I love her content. I asked her if I could react to her content a minute ago. She said that would be fine. For those that think that I'm stealing when I'm reacting. You know, stealing is just taking that content, not making anything of it, correct? Anyhow, let's get into it.
Ciao. I'm not a lawyer, but the 3-count indictment for Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD. Who called him PD? Aka
Right.
Love was unsealed today, so let's talk about it. It's about 14 pages and there are 3 charges included. Count 1 is for racketeering conspiracy, and according to this website, for a racketeering conspiracy charge, the government does not have to prove that the alleged enterprise was actually established, only that you, along with others, conspired or agreed to participate in the enterprise. Count 2 is for sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. And then count 3 is transportation to engage in prostitution. So those are the 3 charges Diddy has been indicted on. Also on the indictment further down, it says that the defendant shall forfeit to the United States any and all property, real and personal, obtained or derived from proceeds obtained directly or indirectly as a result of any of these charges. Basically, it sounds like his assets are frozen.
Damn. So, you know what, y'all? That's another thing about having a lot of money and like being rich. Well, clearly, if you are being a terrible human being, hello. First of all, let me look up racketeering so I can make sure I have the correct definition in my brain. Pattern of illegal activity as extortion and murder that is carried out in furtherance of an enterprise as a criminal syndicate, which is owned or controlled by those engaged in such activity. See also racketeer, influenced, and corrupt organizations. Act compare organized crime. Okay, so like they got together and give me an example. There are many forms of racketeering that fall under the RICO statute, including bank fraud, wire fraud, kidnapping, bribery, extortion, contract for ERDA for hire, aka a hitman, loan sharking, drug trafficking, arson. Okay, now I understand. Okay.
Now, what has also been made public today is the detention memo, which is basically a letter from the government to the judge explaining why Diddy should be held in jail and not released on bond. It's about 16 pages, and there are a few things that I want to talk about from this letter. First up, it says that he's expected to appear in court today, and worth noting, this is a federal case, so don't expect any cameras. And the document says, as set forth below, there is no condition or combination of conditions that will reasonably assure the appearance of the defendant as required and the safety of others and the community, not to mention the integrity of the proceedings. So again, this letter is to basically argue why Diddy should be held in jail and not released to the public. The doc goes into some background on the case, saying that using the power and prestige of the enterprise, Diddy lured female victims into his orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship, then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause those female victims to engage in sexual activity, which included frequent sex acts with male commercial sex workers that the defendant referred to as freak-offs. We all remember freak-offs from Cassie's lawsuit. Freak-offs.
Oh, what? So basically, he got girls that he, I guess, was trying to talk to, holler at, whatever. And in the process of that, he telling them that they need to do it to sex workers. Like, my nigga, you could have just made porn legally. Like, and I'm not being funny. This is so stupid. Right. Miss Quiet Storm, he shouldn't have never made a diss track. That was so stupid.
Were elaborate sex performances that the defendant arranged, directed, did his own activity during, and often electronically recorded. Freak-offs occurred regularly from at least in or around 2009 through this year, sometimes lasting multiple days and frequently involving multiple workers. The defendant arranged freak-offs with the assistance of members and associates of the enterprise, including employees of his businesses. And
multiple days? Your employees, like, what are we why? Like, let me oh my God.
And it notes that these members and associates of this enterprise often staged the hotel rooms where the freak-offs happened, as well as cleaned up the hotel rooms or took care of any damages that were caused as a result of the freak-off. So there's a cliff note here, and it says that, for example, in approximately 2012 in Manhattan, the defendant paid over $46,000 to cover damages to a penthouse hotel room following a freak-off. It goes on to say that Diddy provided controlled substances to female victims so that they could and would continue to engage in freak-off, fight fatigue, physical and emotional exhaustion, and pain. It says he hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged female victims, sometimes by their hair. At least a dozen witnesses will confirm that they personally observed the defendant's violence towards women and/or the injuries sustained by women at the defendant's hand. And then it references the CNN video that we all saw get released earlier this year. And then the next section is of other violence. It says that as charged in the indictment, the defendant, often assisted by members and associates of the enterprise, engaged in kidnapping, arson, and physical violence, such as throwing objects at people, throwing people to the ground, hitting, dragging, choking, and shoving others. Numerous witnesses, including the defendant's employees and others, observed or experienced violence from the defendant firsthand and sustained lasting trauma as a result. For example, in the early morning hours of December 2011, the defendant and a co-conspirator kidnapped an individual at gunpoint to facilitate breaking into and entering the residence of another. So they kidnapped somebody in order to break into the house of this individual one. Multiple witnesses will testify at trial to the events surrounding the kidnapping and break-in, the latter of which is corroborated by police reports and other records. Approximately 2 weeks later, the defendant's co-conspirator set fire to individual one's vehicle by slicing open the car's convertible top and dropping a Molotov cocktail inside the interior. Okay.
Like, what? Oh, so this the Kid Cudi situation. Oh man. Justin Bieber been talking about this?
So individual one is clearly Kid Cudi. So they
111 in the jet.
kidnapped somebody in order to break into Kid Cudi's house. And then 2 weeks later, they blew up his car, allegedly. Multiple witnesses would also testify to the defendant bragging about his role in destroying individual one's car. So this other violence section ends saying that, in short, the defendant's violent tendencies are widely known. However, at no point during the past few decades has the threat of public exposure or law enforcement intervention deterred the defendant from continuing his abuse. The next section is on firearms, and it notes that during the March 2024 raid that we all saw, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s, each with defaced serial numbers, as well as large capacity drum magazines. In addition, 6 legal
See, Shade Room be lying, talking about 15 AR-15.
purchased firearms with serial numbers, some of which were stored in gun safes, were also recovered. And then there's a footnote that says that some of the firearms...
Like, why would you scratch off? What? Who? Like, who you trying to get up out of here?
found during the raid were licensed to current members of Diddy's security staff. So one of the points that they're making here is that Diddy has access to and surrounds himself with firearms and ammunition. So if the court were to release him on bond and tell him not to get new firearms or be around firearms, the government is basically saying that he clearly has access to firearms through others, so that wouldn't work. The next section is about bribery and obstruction of justice, and it talks about the hotel staff being paid from that March 2016 hotel incident with Cassie, and how after he paid them, the video from the incident disappeared from the hotel server. And then it also says that in late 2023, after some of these lawsuits were filed, Diddy and other members of the enterprise made repeated phone calls to victims and witnesses during which they provided them with false narratives of events. So basically, after these lawsuits started coming out, the government says Diddy and his people started calling witnesses and victims to try and hide what he had done. It goes on to say that while the indictment against the defendant was unsealed today, the investigation into other co-conspirators' conduct is active and ongoing. Child. Because this investigation continues to be ongoing and other people may be charged, the government doesn't want to lay out everything that they have, but to the extent that the court has additional questions about the charged offense conduct or any other information within the doc, the government is prepared to proffer additional information on an ex parte basis. Shout out to YSL, because we all know what an ex parte is. The doc.
I don't know what an ex parte is because I ain't been too much into shit. All right. Ex parte. Ex parte is a Latin phrase meaning on one side only, by or for one party. An ex parte communication occurs when a party to a case or someone involved with a party talks or writes to or otherwise communicates directly with the judge about issues in the case without the other party's knowledge. Okay. Having the feds build a case on use crazy facts. Let me listen to this ex parte shit.
Or they have, but to the extent that the court has additional questions about the charged offense conduct or any other information within the doc, the government is prepared to proffer additional information on an ex parte basis. Shout out to YSL, because we all know what an ex parte is. The doc said.
So y'all explain, because I don't understand.
Is that because of Diddy's dangerousness and that the violence has been both spontaneous and premeditated, the government says that Diddy has a disposition to violence that cannot reasonably be prevented through bail conditions. And just so we're all clear, a disposition to violence basically means that it is inherent or a part of his nature to be violent, and therefore anything you try to restrict him from doing doesn't matter because it's who he is. And so therefore he is too dangerous to be released to the public. It also says that some of the violent incidents that have happened, including these freak-offs and other threatening events, happened at his house. So even giving him house arrest isn't going to help because, again, some of these things happened at his house. The next section, because there's more, is about obstruction. Says that
can you imagine not being able to? The man offered $50 million to get bailed out. To bail out. If a city or the feds, whoever, deny $50 million, oh, they don't want your money. It's not the money. They want you, okay? Girl, 18 years worth of crime is crazy.
On or about November 19th, 2023, 3 days after Cassie's lawsuit was filed, Diddy made multiple calls to another victim of his abuse and recorded some of the calls where he was repeatedly asking the victim for support and friendship and attempted to convince the victim that the acts that were abuse were actually things that she willingly engaged in. Diddy assured this victim that if she needed him to, she wouldn't have to worry about anything else. The doc says that Diddy is indeed a flight risk, and even though his attorney now has his passport and the passport of other members in his family, and that he is in the process of selling his plane as well as his LA home, the government says that he still has a vast amount of resources that make him a flight risk, and notes that he is facing at least 15 years imprisonment if he is convicted and maximum of life in prison, and that this fact alone would provide a compelling incentive for anyone to flee from prosecution. But the incentive to flee is especially strong for this defendant who at age 54 faces the very real prospect of spending a substantial portion of the rest of his life in prison. To date, it says that the government has conducted interviews with over 50 victims and witnesses, and the government only expects that number to continue to grow. The government has obtained over 90 cell phones, laptops, and cloud storage accounts, as well as over 30 other electronic and storage devices such
90 cell phones, 120 electronic devices for what?
as hard drives, thumb drives, cameras, and surveillance systems. The electronic data comes from the defendant himself, as well as co-conspirators, victims, and witnesses, and chronicles much of the defendant's criminal activity as it occurred. Basically, the video footage they got is live and in action. And
oh my God, when that footage hit the internet, nah, that's gonna be different. Gang, why you got 120 recording devices? I mean, you can't deny nothing. So let me ask y'all this. Damn. Did they freeze the kids' assets? I know they got their passports, but did they freeze their assets too? I'm glad whatchamacallit got his own house. What's his name? Not Justin, the other one. I don't know if Justin got his own house.
In addition to the firearms and electronics discussed above, the physical evidence also
Definitely should have left with Russ.
includes other evidence of freak-offs, including over 1,000
because Russ was next.
bottles of baby oil and personal lube. Now, Diddy's team has proposed a bail package which includes home detention with electronic monitoring and a $50 million bond, but the government says that that's not enough. It doesn't protect people from his violence, protect people from him contacting or trying to obstruct justice, doesn't do anything to prevent Diddy from accessing his vast resources. And so for all of those reasons, the government respectfully submits that the defendant cannot meet his burden of overcoming the statutory presumption in favor of detention. There are no conditions of bail that would assure the appearance and compliance of the defendant or the safety of others. Accordingly, his bail should be denied. So we'll see what happens because they're in court right now. Both sides will argue their point, and then we'll see what the judge decides. Bail or no bail. How many more days left in 2024? I hope Cassie is having a great day. I'm not a lawyer, but we got a decision. The judge has decided that Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka Diddy, aka P. Diddy, aka PD, will remain detained, as in he got to stay in jail until his trial. Now, again, since federal cases
When is the trial?
are not streamed, there are some reporters in the courtroom that were providing updates on X. So that's who I'm going to use to kind of put together what happened in court that led to the judge deciding that Diddy would remain in jail. So on my earlier video, I went through all the arguments that the prosecution had, but I'm going to use these tweets to kind of outline what the defense was saying. And shout out to Inner City Press because that's whose account I'm referencing. Actually, before the defense, it's worth noting that Diddy has pled not guilty, and the prosecutors say that there's only one victim for count 2, which is the trafficking charge, but they're happy there's only one because they had no idea how many it would be, potentially up to 12 victims. He also says that Diddy had what appears to be narcotics in his hotel room last night. So the defense says that Mr. Combs is not a perfect person. These toxic relationships were mutual. Now he is trying to be better for the rest of his days. If there's one thing we've seen, we should stand with people who are trying to get the help they need. Then there are some tweets regarding the Cassie Hotel video in which Diddy's defense team says 2 people were in a hotel room. An issue that Mr. Combs had more than one girlfriend, okay. Victim 1 was looking through his phone and saw that. Then hit him in the head with a cell phone and took his clothing, so he comes out in a towel. These 2 people were in love. Victim 1 ended up marrying the trainer that Mr. Combs got for her. They had been cheating on each other for years, but now she has 2 kids with the trainer. Years later, she realizes she had a good thing with Mr. Combs.
Damn, so the man she married is the... Or was that what at the time?
She has her lawyers call his lawyer and say that she has written a book. But if you want to buy the rights, you'll have the rights for $30 million. His attorney says, we have a recorded conversation. It did not go well for her and the lawyer. In November 2023, she sues. The attorney also says that when Diddy contacts witnesses, it's not to stop a criminal investigation. Why is it depicted as a one-sided thing? There's 30 million reasons, $1 a piece. She, referencing Cassie, said, I'm going to write a book. You can buy the rights. There's also this other tweet that says, is it trafficking if everyone wants to be there? No, we don't want the federal government in our bedroom. The kidnapping, we spoke to the victim. She didn't use that word to us. One day it may be heard. So those are just a few. They're kind of all over the place, but those are just a few of what happened in the courtroom. And then they take a quick break. Then the judge comes back and rules that, in this case, I find the presumption has not been rebutted, so Sean Combs will remain detained. The judge goes on to say, there has been significant violence and weapons around. Also, coercion of witnesses, even gentle coercion, can be effective. The type of behavior we're talking about happens behind closed doors. I thank your family members for coming, but
I mean, they told the nigga, you can't even be gentle, bitch. You been so rough, don't try and be gentle now. Like, damn. Almost like bribery is what I heard.
cannot release him. There's going to be a lot of pieces to this, so I'm going to try to keep up and present it all in a way that makes sense.
She the only one that makes sense to me. Y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comment section below. Shout out to her. Y'all make sure y'all tap into her channel is I'm Not a Lawyer, But. Okay. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Hey, yeah.